You know, Janjan, he was a little exceptional. You know, I was a little worried about him at one point because it seemed like it came too easy to him. You know, usually a student has to struggle to complete a project. Mm-hmm. And he just kept getting hits, you know? He just kept, he didn't struggle as much as I thought he would. And I remember talking with another more senior person at the time who thought, you know, Janjan really needs a more challenging project.
Welcome to the Navigating Nano podcast, where we explore the multidisciplinary world of nanotechnology with distinguished professors and researchers. Join us as we sit down and talk about their cutting-edge research, career paths, and expert opinions on the expanding world of nanotechnology. Dr. David Waldeck, professor at the University of Pittsburgh and former advisor to JSNN's very own Dr. Jiajin Wei, joins us. Dr. Waldeck is the department chair of chemistry whose research focuses on the nanoscale manipulation of electrons and photons. He joins us, the Materials Research Society at JSNN, to talk about what advisors look for in students, new faculty members, and that is really okay and fulfilling to go into industry. Join us as we navigate Nano.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to Navigating Nano session, and today we are privileged to have Dr. David Waldeck. Am I pronouncing it right?
Waldeck.
Waldeck.
Yes.
Waldeck. He's a professor in chemistry from the University of Pittsburgh. He's currently the director of Peterson Institute of Nanoscience and Engineering. Welcome, Dr. David. I'd rather call you David because it's easier to pronounce it. And here we're going to have a conversation with the students openly, and we want to know you, a little bit about you, your mentorship, how far it has been for you, and a little bit about the work that you do in your lab and how we can relate to that as students and as, scientists. So, to start, I would like to know, who are you? How has been your academic journey? Kindly just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I was born a long time ago, 1956. And I grew up in a family with 3 brothers and 3 sisters, so there were 7 children. And we went to parochial school. My parents were Catholic. And then I was the middle child, and I went to college and worked my way through college. My mother had thought, I dreamt of becoming a mathematician.
Oh.
That was my dream. But my mother convinced me that if I was a mathematician, I would not be able to get a job. The only job I could ever get is to be a professor at a university, and we knew that was not possible.
Okay.
So when I first went to college, she convinced me that I should try to become a physician. So that's why I first took chemistry classes. And when I took organic chemistry as a second-year student, it was amazing. It was the first time I felt like I was in college. It was something that, I'd never seen before in my life, and it was this new way of thinking about the world. And then I was so excited about chemistry from that, I declared to be a chemistry major. And then in my third year, I took what's called physical chemistry, where I learned about quantum mechanics. And I fell in love all over again with quantum mechanics. And so I just chose it because it was intellectually stimulating and I could get excited about it and really care about it. And then one of the graduate students explained to me that if I went to graduate school, they would pay me to go to school. And I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. They're going to pay me to go to school and learn this stuff? And so I know it's very naive, right? I was just a naive person, and I followed what I found exciting, and I was lucky enough that it was something that the other people find practical and useful. Yeah. And so that's why I went to graduate school, and eventually in graduate school I got my PhD. And then I followed a very traditional trajectory for people in the United States anyway, who are going to be academic professors. After my PhD, I did a postdoctoral work for 2 years. So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I went to college there and worked in a hospital while I went to college. And then I went to graduate school in Chicago, University of Chicago. And then as a postdoc, I went to California for 2 years. And then after that, I looked everywhere in the United States to try to find a job. And I found a job in Pittsburgh, and I moved there. And my wife and I have lived there ever since.
So you have transversed through, being a chemist academically. You worked in a hospital, but you ended up being a professor. Why the choice of being a professor? Why not, industry or, work in a hospital, really?
I'm fascinated in it's going to sound selfish, but I'm fascinated by ideas. And it was the ideas that really drove me to be a professor. Yeah. Right? Lots of people fill their passion by being a physician and helping people in a hospital, or by making a new product that's going to make people's lives better. And those are things that are very, very valuable as well, right? But I think we're all individuals, and we have sort of our own priorities. Yeah. And in mine, we're sort of really built around these ideas.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your mom tried to convince you to either do mathematics or physics. And we don't realize the influence that we actually get from our parents to push us to the areas that, they think we should go. But you chose chemistry over what she decided. And how do you feel? Has that, was it a good choice? A better choice?
For me, chemistry was an excellent choice. Okay. Would mathematics have been a better choice? I don't know. I mean, how can you know, right?
You never know.
You never know. My mother was happy with my choice. She was trying to give me the best advice she could based on what she knew. She was a nurse, right? So she knew the medical system. My father had a grocery store, and I grew up working in the grocery store. And so, they were sort of blue-collar people, working jobs and raising a family. So they had a worldview that didn't see the possibility of their son being a professor. It just... And it's not that they were against it or anything. It just wasn't in their imagination.
Yeah, but congratulations, you did it. And here you are, Dr. David. And you've had so many years of experience as a professor. You've taught so many students over the years. We have Dr. Way, a very good example, who I believe is a good PI, isn't he? Yeah. He is a great PI.
Especially since you're being recorded.
So, as all these years, you've seen so many students through your hands. They become as well professors, probably, doing amazing work as well, like you mentioned. What are your takeaways as a mentor? What has been that journey for you as a mentor for so many students? And if after you are done with all these, what would be the takeaway in your mentorship journey?
Yeah, mentorship is something that I've had to learn on the job, like many other things. We're not trained in it in an organized fashion, and so I think I've gotten better over time. When I was more junior and younger, I felt more affinity with students in a direct way. We were sort of working together a lot, and I could be pretty demanding at times with the students. Over time, I think I've matured a little bit, and I've taken, a more organized approach that is built around each student. Some students are more capable than other students, and those capabilities are across the spectrum, right? They're not just math skills or intellectual skills. They can be organizational skills, right? And work ethic skills and emotional things. And so I've tried to learn to adapt to the individual student. I usually try to start out very structured when they're more junior students, and then let them become more independent over time. I often tell them that, by the time they graduate, they should be suggesting projects to me.
To you,
right? Rather than me suggesting projects to them.
Well, I'll pause there and I will invite my audience to also, dive in and ask the questions. This is our platform, not for me. It is for all of us. Do you have any questions? Yes.
My name is Frank. I am a student of Dr. Wei. I work with Dr. Wei. And when I was told that you're coming and Dr. Wei had his PhD from you, I was like, whoa, Dr. Wei is our academic father, so you are our academic grandfather. In a way, I was very excited to get to see you and to speak with you. So what I wanted to ask is, I know when Dr. Wei finished his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh, he did a postdoctoral work for some time and then moved to the industry. So I just want to throw a general question. Does it make you feel better as a professor to see your students going into academia as opposed to going into the industry?
No, I don't think one is more fulfilling or better than the other. Most of my students have in fact gone into industry. So I may not interact with them as much after they go into industry, and oftentimes I don't get to know as much about what they're doing, right? Because companies like to keep things quiet if they can. But in Professor Wei's case, his industrial job was an unusual one as well, right? It was a job where he defined research projects and wrote grant proposals. It was a lot like being a professor anyway. And there are lots of variations with industrial jobs. And on the outside, often when we look, and maybe this is a human thing, right? On the outside, when we look at something, if we're not involved, it looks what I call monolithic. It looks like a very uniform thing. And then you go and you learn about industry and you find out, gee, there are lots of different types of industries and lots of different types of experiences. So I'm very proud of my students who have gone on and stayed in doing something scientific and technical in some way and are very happy with it. I even got contacted maybe 4 months ago by a woman who, she got her master's degree with me. So she started working in my laboratory, and one day she came in and she apologized to me, essentially, that she didn't think that she could work in a lab and be a PhD, that she wanted to work with people. And so she got her master's degree and left. And then she got an MBA, and now she's a CEO of a company.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we all have to find our own way and make our own journey.
Yeah, just picking up from that, it is so good that you've mentioned that she was in your lab, she did an MBA, and now she is a CEO. It is that like looking at the levels of transitioning of an individual, and you've gotten to see the transition of your student because you've done the mentorship, you've instilled the organization skills, you have instilled this structure for these students, but eventually they get to grow, then they get to sprout. So you as the mentor, as you as the PI for the work that you do, have you ever had individuals or students getting to go to industry and translate your work or get to use the work that you do in your lab?
Right. My work has been pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really esoteric, but pretty focused on fundamental ideas. So there's nothing that's been translated into a product per se.
Okay.
I've had a number of students who have done work in electrochemistry and have gone on to do things in industrial settings that used that knowledge, but it didn't translate something that we were doing directly.
Yeah, so it translates into knowledge, but that's what we're all looking for, the translation of the work we do, not only in the lab setting, but even, can write a book about the work that you've done this far. Do you have a book?
Well, I've written a few books. One book is called Principles of Physical Chemistry.
We should look for that.
So it's a textbook.
Yeah.
And then other books are more specialized on electronic and optical properties of chiral molecules.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that is good. That wasn't mentioned, so it's good to know that you actually have books that we can refer to.
Right, yeah. I wrote this book for third year physical chemistry instruction in college.
Perfect. We are going to look for that. Any other question?
Thank you, Dr. Waldeck. For students hoping to get into academia via the postdoctoral track, what advice would you give such students as to the kind of PIs to seek while doing postdoctoral positions? And does that have any impact on your chances of getting into academia? So that is what I really want to know.
It matters a lot. I think that, because I've been involved in hiring of PIs for quite a while, and I can tell you a little bit about the process we follow, right? So usually we would advertise and have like maybe 100 plus applications for a position, right? And very often what we do is we begin by reading research proposals and identifying people's ideas and how well their ideas and areas fit with what are perceived as the needs of our department. And so that stage of things, everything it's pretty much flat, right? But your experiences affect what your ideas are and how current they are, if they're really at what is perceived to be the interesting new directions, right? But then we look at, after that, we look at things like CVs, we look at letters of recommendation, we look at statements about teaching and diversity and all of these other components. And so that's where effects due to the postdoc mentor you had or the PI you had, what sort of letter that person writes, and how well known that person is, right? So if I have knowledge of a particular PI or a particular postdoc mentor, then that letter might have a bigger impact on me than if I don't know that person, right? And so that's where name recognition and known prestige can really matter, which I think is probably what you were pointing to with your question a little bit, maybe. So at that stage, there's already been some filtering, and so maybe your 100 have gone down to 33 or so, right? And then at that stage, after looking at all of the information, then you've narrowed your considerations to some subset of people. And when I first started, that was the stage that you decided to start inviting people to campus. Mm-hmm. And so usually you never went beyond 6 people. So, there was a big sort of down selection at that point in time. Now it's a little different with Zoom and Skype and video conferencing. We actually interview more people now. So what we do is we have another stage of pre-interview, we call it, right? Where maybe we'll go from 33 down to 14 or something, and have online meetings and discussions for about an hour with each person. And then we'll end up, after that, inviting 4 or 5 for an actual in-person interview. So it's a very competitive process in academia these days. And our process, it may differ in details from what other places do, but I think that's a pretty common type structure now. So name recognition of people you work with, and choosing a field of research activity that is considered new and exciting, right? Or maybe taking your PhD work and doing a postdoc in something that's a little bit complementary, and then putting those together in a new way that maybe other people haven't imagined, right? That really shows creativity, and that can be important as well, I think.
Yeah, and in this case, you're looking at the PI. What about when you're looking for students? You as a professor, when you're looking for students to work with, some of these aspects I believe do apply, but what do you majorly look for in students to work in your lab? Not postdocs, as graduate students.
As graduate students, so usually there's sort of 2 ways of answering that question. So, one is when somebody's going to join my group, that means there are a pool of people who've been accepted into the graduate program, and they're there that particular year. And usually what I do is I look for interest and motivation, right? Because they've already been selected based on academics, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm looking for people who are showing a real interest in the projects and look like they're going to be motivated, because that's something that it's hard to teach, right? That's something I can help encourage, right? But somebody who has a passion about what they're doing, I think that's a very important element towards success.
Yeah, you cannot instill motivation. Individuals have to do that for themselves.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
My name is Nano. I'm also a member of Dr. Wei's research group. Want to ask, what do you think about multidisciplinary programs like the one that we are kind of studying here? It's basically a combination of everything, and we're coming from different fields. I remember here in this class we were 9 people, each one, like in the first year, everyone was coming from a different field. But at the end of the day, again, we have to deal with different fields here. So overall, what do you think? Is that a positive thing in our resume, or a negative thing from your aspect of view? I mean, I've done a little bit of this thing in chemistry area, and then I've done a little bit of biology thing, and a little bit of this thing and that thing. And when you put all these things together in your resume, how does that look like from your point of view?
I think that it can be, there are pluses and minuses, but I think overall it's a big positive. The main thing people are going to be looking at, if you're looking for an academic position and a research position, people are going to be looking at the research you've done, and they're not going to care so much about whether your bachelor's degree is in biology or chemistry or physics. So they're really going to be focusing on the research, and I think there's a lot of interest and excitement about interdisciplinary research, and I think that's why places like this exist, right?
Yes.
Is because people share that excitement and want to create these places. So where would the downside be? The downside might be if you were applying to a research position in, say, a chemistry department, and almost all of what you did was in biology, say, right? And then people might wonder, well, what sort of courses can she teach in chemistry? So I mean, there's still people who think that way, right? And so that's the one sort of downside, but I think it's a minor thing. I think that there are many people in academia, and I like to think of myself as one of them, who would say, this is a smart person. And she may not have gotten her PhD in chemistry, but she's going to be able to figure out how to teach these courses.
Yeah.
And there are many people who believe that. And so I think overall it's a positive.
Happy to hear that.
Yeah, I think we are all trying to integrate something onto something. I'm biology and I'm trying to do a little bit of engineering. So it's the integration of those two disciplinaries into one and come up with a good research objective and answer the questions that people are looking for.
Biological engineering is one of those really hot new areas. So
we hope so when we graduate we have jobs, right? Yes. Any other question?
I'm not a student of Dr. Wei's group, but I really want to ask this question. What unique quality did you find in Dr. Wei when he was a student that you think every graduate student should have? Like, I mean, you can say one or more, but what is one of those unique qualities that differentiates Dr. Wei as a graduate student under you?
Janjan, he was a little exceptional. I was a little worried about him at one point because it seemed like it came too easy to him. usually a student has to struggle to complete a project. And he just kept getting hits, He just kept, he didn't struggle as much as I thought he would. And I remember talking with another more senior person at the time who thought, Janjun really needs a more challenging project. And that was the one I alluded to today at the beginning of my talk, one of those early projects on the chirality induced spin selectivity. That's why I recommended it to him. And it took him longer to complete that project, but he just has a knack for, seeing, very often when you're trying to do an experiment, there are lots of things that aren't working. And you don't know what's the cause necessarily and what's the effect or what's just, the haze that's in the way of you seeing the problem. But Janjun always had a real knack or special skill of seeing through the haze and really identifying what the culprit was. Actually, I have some questions I'm going to ask him later today about some of the experiments he did a long time ago, because my students, they're able to do it, but they aren't able to do it as well. And so he has that. So we used to call it good hands, right? People had, sort of like the magic touch.
Yeah.
Right? And he was a person who always had that.
Not sure if I can get that, but
I'm not sure that can be learned either. But yeah.
I think we all have unique features about ourselves, and he was blessed on the hand. Some of us are blessed somewhere else, So it is your unique feature that, defines you, so that when your PI goes one day and is asked something specific about you, Shibin, he will be very specific and say, this is what Shibin was good at. So whether it was Dr. Wei or you as an individual, it is just that unique.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, about you. You are equally very, very unique. Yes.
I think what you just said, we as students, we've seen very often in the way he mentors us. You can approach Dr. Wei with something you think is it's new, your own idea, and just look at it, and what he will tell you just blow your mind. Like, how did he know? I remember I was working on something someday, and then I approached him. I said, I tried this, I tried that, it isn't working, and he just said, oh, maybe you can try it in this other way. And I asked him this question, like, how does he do it? How does he just see a problem and
he has a solution.
So he just laughed and said, experience that okay, he has been in the research space for so long then. And so I think he has this natural ability to look at the problem and think quickly on his feet and provide solution. I wish, like Shibin said, I am like that, but
yeah, and I think with research, we always have questions, and we're always having this idea that we are going to come up with a novel research project by the end of our thesis, and then you realize that you're doing more of proof of concept of what a lot of people have already done. And now this leads me to, I think, probably our last question, if anybody doesn't have any. So, you have read a lot of books, a lot of research papers, and you've done proof of concept of what people have already done, and you've even written your own books. So, what have you done really in your research that is not book-based, like what people have already done? that you take away and say, this is my novel idea that can, experimentally, this is my novel idea, be it a protocol that worked, that is reproducible. What have you been able to do so far?
Oh, I
think, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually easy one for me, because I've thought about that recently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this idea of chiral-induced spin selectivity.
This is you.
This is a really new thing. And people should have realized it 100 years ago, and they all missed it.
Okay, how unfortunate.
So people, when I first tell them about it, some of them look at me like I'm crazy. Some that are more sophisticated used to look at me like, well, yeah, it should be that way. and usually what the theoretical people will say is, but it's going to be such a small effect that it won't matter. But the reality is it's actually a big effect. And I think that, we still have a lot of work to do to prove it, but I think it's going to change the way we have to think about how chemistry happens, because chemistry and biology are all about electrons moving around in molecules and atoms. And if the spin matters in chiral molecules, that's a really, really important thing. And so that's the thing that I think is really unusual and really, really new.
So we are hoping to get a book specifically for spin selectivity.
I've had numerous publishers ask me to write a book about chiral-induced spin selectivity, and I'm definitely going to write one, but there's nothing firm at this point in time.
Okay.
But it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. So we really wish you the best. We are looking forward to reading more. And I don't think there's anybody doing the work that you're doing here in our school. But the good thing is you get to write about it, you get to do your research, and we can also pick up the idea and get to do it in our research.
And I hope and encourage you to do it. Part of what I and my collaborator decided 10 to 15 years ago is we really needed to encourage more people to get involved in this research, and especially more junior people.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to do. It's so much more than any one individual or set of individuals can do.
Well, the good thing is you're mentoring students who are going to pick up from where you are, and they'll continue the work. Thank you so much. I have been your host, Faith Zablon, for Navigating Nano, and it has been wonderful to have you, Professor David. And we hope that we get to read more of your work, and after this, we can create a network that is going to continue. You are our grandfather PI, right? How did you say it? Our PI grandpa. So we are hoping we are going to have you. We are also going to develop our own grandpa PI so that it can be a great grandpa PI. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor. Thank you, my audience, and have a great afternoon.